How's that for autofocus? Alright. Welcome to the Decompression Chamber, Season 3, Episode 5. Wow, I just rattled that one off the top of my head, as if I didn't just accidentally fail to record my intro. So our opening quote... Sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Mario, and I'm the host. So the opening quote for today's episode is going to be from a film called The Big Chill, which I just watched recently. And I'll give some context. The character in question is a kind of boring, middle-of-the-road, middle-aged man, and he's looking back on his life choices and the fact that he doesn't really enjoy his life. And the quote goes something like this. He says, "Nobody said it was going to be fun. At least, nobody said it to me." Roll the intro. Sorry, I probably rolled the intro already. So I was like, I guess the reason why I picked that quote is because I guess the point of life to some extent is to try and make it fun. You're not guaranteed enjoyment. You're not guaranteed success. You're not really guaranteed anything, apart from death and taxes, as Shakespeare said. But I guess my interpretation is that to some extent, the point of life is to try and make it enjoyable, try and make it fun, try and do something that makes you passionate, that makes you feel that like force of life, that joie de vivre, as they say. I guess I came up with that quote. Well, I didn't come up with it. I presented that quote as the opening quote because, I'm just in a bit of a melancholy mood, I touched on it last episode, but people are complicated. Moments are complicated, life is complicated, days are complicated, and I would describe my day today and the ones preceding it to have been overwhelmingly positive. And I found myself this evening in a bit of a melancholy mood, So if I wheel that back a bit, I mentioned last episode how Grumpy Maz, a version of me emerges where I'm not well rested, I'm too engrossed in my own problems, and I don't do enough of a good job of being happy. I sort out ways to fix that. I've fixed my sleep schedule to a large extent. I'm sleeping, resting better, and feeling better physically and emotionally. I don't know whether it's worth grabbing, but I've got a whiteboard, and it has significantly changed my life. And it sounds like such a silly, inane statement, but I guess one of the things I've always known about myself that I've failed to fix or failed to kind of mitigate is the fact that I'm quite poor at organizing my own life. I'm sure there's an episode where you could pick this up from season 2, where I'm just bad at planning my life. I guess I spend so much time being worried about the future. I don't like to engage with it as a reality. It's more of like a horror movie villain than it is I don't know, just a real thing coming towards me. And so having this whiteboard, I'm gonna, it's a prop. I'm gonna grab it. Yeah, not that it was much effort, but we'll see how much of this is understandable and legible with my shadows and the light. But basically, so what I've done is here in red is I've outlined kind of the days of the week and like what my priorities ought to be roughly in the days of the week. What I've done here in the black is I've created a space for each day to kind of write down what I want to do, and I tick it off as I get throughout the day, which I haven't ticked off today, but that's why. It's because I've written tomorrow's stuff already. A positive sign, because it means I've completed today's stuff. And so in this top corner, I've added a list of things that I've called side quests. And those side quests are just kind of minor tasks that aren't necessarily immediate priorities, but need to be completed at some point or another. And the reality of the situation is that I got a lot going on. Normally I quite like doing nothing, but other than doing nothing, the things that I like to do are quite complicated, and they require a lot of effort and organization and planning and collaboration and hard thought and, all of that stuff. So that's just kind of what's been going on. I've started planning stuff. I'm able to look over the week and kind of decide which days I give priority to which tasks. And then that means that when I come to either the morning of the day I'm attacking or the night before, like I've shown, I can kind of write down all the things that I want. And this is true for when I do to-do lists outside of the whiteboard on little post-it notes, but oftentimes the things that I actually am worried about, that I'm concerned about, that need doing, it's not that difficult. It's quite simple. And so the process of feeling well rested, that's the kind of foundation of my current success. Knocking off these to-do lists, and within those to-do lists, I'm trying to take a holistic approach, It's about eating healthy meals regularly. It's about going to the gym. It's about, having social occasions that mean that I'm, interacting with my peers and my friends in a way that kind of keeps me sustained and happy. And, is overall attacking the targets of my kind of educational and professional aims. And, I just do feel more accomplished. The process of doing those things and ticking them off means that at the end of the day, when I've rubbed them out, I just do feel like more sense of accomplishment and achievement and calm. And there may be other days where I haven't written a to-do list, where I've done all of those things, and yet I get to the evening and I don't really feel that accomplished. I feel kind of, I would hesitate to say devoid of worth, but I'd say like I didn't feel like the day itself had any worth, Yeah, I literally just realised now that in the corner there's a bunch of packages, and that's to do with the sketch that I told you guys about. So, don't fret. But I'm the one fretting, so I don't know what I'm telling you, the audience, to not fret. In any case, so yeah, I'm just kind of, I remember friend of the show, Jamal, shout out Jamal, hope you're doing well. He's been on a couple of times. I need to have him back on. I remember speaking to him, and I was just telling him how, when I perceive my own life as a video game, sometimes I find it a bit easier, like maybe that idea of like being in third person, or just the sense that the games and video games kind of program your brain to kind of like try and achieve stuff and feel accomplished when you have, and look on to the next goal. And obviously, some of those elements are a bit sinister in terms of how they program the mind, but some of them you can use to your advantage, or I've used to my advantage at least, And so, for example, I don't know whether it's visible, but over here by the mirror, I've gotten some daily affirmations, and like I don't know whether I'll knock them up on the screen or whether I can just read them out now, but like one of the main ones I have that's kind of screen left. Well, it's left to me as well, actually, as I look at it. It says, "My feelings are always valid, but that doesn't mean they're the right response." That affirmation, it kind of allows me to explore the fact that it's not good to kind of suppress or invalidate your own opinions or stances or feelings, but in reality, those feelings, despite kind of having like a true basis within myself, it doesn't mean that they're the most appropriate or most valid or most helpful response to a situation. And so it's me trying to find this middle ground between feeling valid and feeling kind of accepting how I feel about things, but in a way that also shows that how I feel about things isn't always 100% right, isn't always the best way to kind of respond to a situation. I've got a bunch of other ones. One of them I quite like. I always list it off. It's a quote from Uncle Iroh from Avatar: The Last Airbender, the animated series. It says, "Pride is not the opposite of shame, but its source. True humility is the only antidote to shame." And if I'm honest, that could be the quote to every single episode. That could be the opening quote. Because I think maybe it's a kind of masculine urge, or maybe it's just like a societal problem, but this idea of pride and shame, they do feel like opposite sides of the same coin, in the sense that in order to feel less shame, you must feel more pride, or in order to avoid feeling shameful, you have to protect your pride. When in reality, it's us holding on to that sense of pride. It's us being so held on to our sense of self and our ego that we are kind of that we become subject to the feelings of shame, and the idea that if you release the idea of the ego, if you kind of step away from that and realize that I am more, or maybe I'm not the center of everything, then maybe you don't feel shame in the same way. And something that I find with these affirmations is that it's a lot easier to write them and say them than to believe them. not every single time that I say them to myself, I do believe them, but I tell them to myself anyway, because I hope that at one point or another it will absorb, It's kind of me battling against myself. And that could be the title of the episode. That's kind of what it always feels like to me. That's what life feels like to me, if I'm honest. Yeah, I kind of wish I had a sip of water to drink on for this pause, because that is just kind of the way it is for me, I guess. And I think this show is an emblem of that, is a microcosm of that, I think if that internal conflict and internal struggle was kind of not as sharp and severe, I wouldn't need a YouTube series where I just monologue for 20 minutes straight, with no audience, with not that I don't value the viewers, but let's be real, I'm not preaching to the masses here. I'm literally just doing this to get this out my system. So I do appreciate you listening. I do appreciate it, because I wonder whether, to some extent, this brings you as an audience member some sort of emotional conclusion about yourself, At the end of the day, I wonder to myself whether I do this so that you can feel heard, or whether I'm doing this so that you can learn more about me, or whether I can learn more about me, I'm just going to pause a second to fix something. I'll be back. I feel like I was on the other side of the screen just before. No, that's silly. But yeah, so that's kind of what I wonder to myself. It's like, what is the purpose of this show? Am I doing it to kind of validate the way I feel? Am I doing it to try and connect to some part of the audience that they aren't able to connect with themselves? Am I doing this because I want to feel heard? I remember I was listening to a podcast and they were quoting a writer, so this is paraphrasing, but he says something like, the whole point of writing, or the whole point of communication, is one person screams into the abyss, "I'm alive," and the person reading, or being the audience to it, responds to it emotionally, because that's a part of them going, "I'm alive, I'm alive, and I'm noticing that you're alive." And I guess maybe that, to a great extent, that's what this stuff is. But nevertheless, I get good reviews. People tell me they enjoy it. I mean, I'm sure one of you who's present watching right now will have told me these things, and yet I always just tell myself, I tell it to you guys, that at the end of the day, I'm doing it for my own approval. I've always kind of thought about a potential future where I look back at myself and I kind of want to know what I would have been like at 21 years old, What was it like being Mario at the start of third year, going through the stresses that he was feeling at the time, And I wonder whether there'll be other people in the future as well who look back and go, well, that's what he was feeling at the time, and maybe they'll know me at the time present, or they'll be watching my videos at the time present and be like, look how much he's grown, or look how much those situations have changed. Look how much the things that he was worried about then aren't even issues anymore. They've way past him. They happened years back, And maybe that's just something I think to reassure myself. I think at the end of the day, this is me kind of carving my essence into the sands of time. This is me etching on a stone tablet that's buried in a desert, what my name is and what my name means. Which is kind of funny, because I've just spent like 2.5-3 minutes pontificating about the meaning of a show that you're already watching and already know. But if you're from the future, that's pretty cool, So, hello from the future. The past was okay. But, the reason why I started this episode saying I got in a melancholy mood is I just watched a Michael Moore documentary called Capitalism, A Love Story. And that is, wildly depressing and horrifying, but in a real, visceral sense of, seeing people's lives get fucked up, and the perpetrators of the 2008 financial crash running away with money and no consequences, and, finding out that England's current financial situation is not good because, I don't really know the situation, but my reading of it is that the people in government are incompetent and they put the whole country at risk to better themselves. There's a Dave quote. For those who don't know, Santan Dave, you got some catching up to do. But in his song Question Time, it's like, forgive me because I can't remember the line leading up to it, but essentially he says that politicians are playing a gambling game, but it's lives that they gamble with, you know? That's just the situation we're in. In any case, yeah, so that's got me in a bit of a melancholy mood, I guess. It could just be a little bit of fatigue as well. We're getting close to my bedtime, which sounds like such an old person thing to say. But it's a good thing. Routine sorts me out, as I've outlined in this episode. Oof. Yeah. But overall, it's been a really good day. I had a screenwriting lecture with a professional, Julian Unthank, who's really amazing. Given a lot of helpful advice, really kind of interesting character, dynamic presenter, really educational and entertaining at the same time. And I got a response from a director who I really respect, who's done a lot of cool, interesting shit, and it's just good to like get that kind of connection with people that you really respect professionally, you know, even if it doesn't always end up being the thing that you expected. You know, the world is many things, and I think the most of which is unpredictable. You know, I guess if you'd asked a 14-year-old version of me what they thought I'd be doing when I was 21, you know, what I'd be doing in September of 2022, I don't think they ever could have pointed to this. Never. Not in a million years. I don't even think marrying like June of 2020, you know, the friendships I've made, the people I've met, the experiences I've had, the person that I am, you couldn't predict it, and I guess that's just the wonderful beauty of the spontaneity of life. And I guess that's where I am, and that's why I made this video, is that even if you're in a bit of a negative place, I think that gives you more space to move towards positivity, you know. If you're in a positive space, you just want to stay there, you know. You're kind of treading water, I guess, or maybe trying to capitalize off what you're already succeeding from. But when you're in a negative space, that makes that upward climb so much more important. It makes it so much more important. And everybody has different steps they need to take up. Oftentimes those steps involve reaching out to other people, involving the people close to you and important to you. But everybody has different steps, you know. It's I can only ever really talk about my struggles. I can relate to others or share others or kind of transmit other people's stories, but in terms of what I really know, truly, I only know about my struggles, because I spend all day thinking about them, or I spend enough of the day, you know. I was speaking with a friend recently, and they said something that struck a chord with me. They said, I spend so much time thinking about the future, I find it hard to stay in the moment, you know. And it's been hard not to think about that. Ironically, a statement that was said in the past, but it's been hard not to think of that every day since I heard it, because I related to it a lot. And so that's what I'm trying to do at the moment. Stay focused on the present, because at the end of the day, you don't have anything else. The future is a myth. The past is imagination. What you only have is right now. And so the fact that you've spent 20 minutes of right now with me, it means a lot. It means a lot. I value it more than you know. So yeah, thanks for watching this episode, and I hope you have a cool whatever, you know. Think about what positive steps are possible for you, and jump towards them, because you might not get another chance. Made it. Yeah.